Well, thank you for joining everyone today. My name is Kirsten Loita. I'm a partner here at Osage University Partners. I'm very happy to welcome you to the Meet the VCs webinar. This is the first webinar we're doing like this, where we're talking with investors about their models, potentially how they work with the companies that they invest in, and because we work with universities, how they work with universities as well. So this is the first time we're doing this. I hope it's a really great format for all of you. And I'm really excited to have two investors on today who also have shared lab facilities that they offer to the companies that they invest in as well. So we'll go to the next slide. I am joined by two VC colleagues, Jennifer Griffin of Mission BioCapital and Joe Collura of Portal Innovations. I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. Jennifer, we'll start with you.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Griffin, and I am in the Cambridge office of Mission BioCapital. I've been with the firm 2.5 years. Scientist by training, did my graduate work in microbiology and genetics, started my career in academic licensing at MIT's Technology Licensing Office, and spent some time in consulting as well as managing the investment strategy for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that deploys a whole bunch of capital to keep biotech very strong in Massachusetts. At Mission BioCapital, I manage a variety of our strategic efforts, one of which I'll tell you about today that supports academic spinouts. I also do investor relations for the firm. Pleasure to be here.
So glad to have you, Jennifer, and I love seeing another fellow former tech transfer person over on the VC side now. Joe, please introduce yourself.
Awesome. And again, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this panel. Looking forward to doing the panel with you as well, Jennifer. My name is Joe Collura. I'm head of business development at Portal Innovations here at our Boston site, which just opened a few weeks ago in the old Boston Globe building. And I'll highlight what we're doing here in Boston and broadly at Portal as well. My career started quite, I think, atypical compared to, just the typical science career. I started in the Air Force, actually. I went to the Air Force Academy. I did large-scale operations, worked with program management and did negotiations on behalf of the Air Force with the Air Force's drone platform. And then I had a calling to come into biotech as an undergrad biologist and also did some graduate work in cell and tissue engineering. I love science. I love the higher mission to help patients. And so I came running to Boston a little over half a decade ago at this point, and worked all over different areas of drug development. I worked at AbbVie, I worked at Biogen, I worked up at a startup company called SpringWorks. I was very fortunate and got to be a part of drug commercializations, drug INDs, drug collaborations in the early discovery space, and joined Portal Innovations here early last fall. Really when we first expanded the firm from Chicago, when this building I am currently sitting in was concrete, and today it's labs, and we're up and operating and looking forward to talking more about that.
And we are really looking forward to hearing it. Thank you both for taking the time to talk with us today. I know we're going to have a lot of questions from our audience. We'll go to the next slide before we get to your presentations. The slides and a recording of this webinar will be available on our partner portal, and a recording will also be available on our YouTube channel. The partner portal that I mentioned is an online portal for tech transfer officers and researchers at our partner institutions, and it's full of relevant tech transfer and startup content. So once you're in the portal, which you do need to register for if you haven't already done so, you'll find the downloadable presentation there under the resources tab, OUP webinars, and you'll also find a link to the webinar there. And you can find both this webinar through the portal or through our YouTube channel through the QR codes that are shown on this page as well. We will be sending out this webinar, a link to it, as well as the decks later this week, or actually maybe could be early next week, to everyone who registered for this webinar as well. We do have a number of upcoming webinars I just wanted to mention briefly. We are, and you may not have actually seen the advertisements for these. We're going to be setting up the marketing for them soon. One is, so a couple of people from OUP will be talking about finding your CEO for your startup company. That'll be on June 21st. We're going to be doing our second installment of the Meet the VCs series with some climate tech investors on July 31st. It's going to feature Kyle Teamy from RE Capital and Christine from Breakthrough Energy Ventures. And then we have a webinar scheduled on September 5th that is going to be on university royalty monetization. So we can go to the next slide. A short intro on OUP for those of you who don't know us. We're a venture capital fund that partners with academic institutions to invest in their startups. We typically do so by exercising their participation rights that they have available through their licenses. As part of that partnership, the institutions share in a portion of our profit based on how the companies perform for the fund, but we also offer a lot of programmatic support to the universities in tech transfer and startups, such as webinars like these. We're now on our 4th fund here at OUP. We've made investments in over 140 companies in all areas of deep science. And if we go to the next slide, it just shows an example, many examples of companies that we have invested with in. And I'm going to have us go to the next slide after that, just to show our very brief agenda, which is Jennifer's going to talk about the model at Mission BioCapital. Then Joe will talk about the model at Portal Innovations. This webinar is for you and for you to ask your questions of these investors with these shared lab facilities for the life sciences. So please write in your questions as you are hearing them talk about their models, how they work with these startup companies, how they work with perhaps startups coming out of academic institutions in particular. Write them in. They're here to answer your questions. That's why they joined this particular webinar, for you to get to know them. And if you put them in the Q&A, I will be monitoring those. We will hold all of the questions until both Jennifer and Joe are finished with their presentations. And with that, we will then pass the baton over to Jennifer to go through Mission BioCapital's slides.
Great. Thank you very much. So, in a lot of ways, Mission BioCapital is a pretty typical early stage biotech venture firm. We're currently deploying from our 5th fund. We have about $500 million under active management. And we write early stage checks, so seed stage checks as well as Series A. We'll deploy single-digit millions for the first check, and then we'll follow on up to about 15 million per portfolio company of ours. We look for, breakthrough life science technologies. We are mostly a therapeutics fund. We do opportunistically invest in med tech and diagnostics. We actually have a non-invasive glucose monitor in our system, or in our portfolio rather, but we're mostly therapeutics. We look for passionate entrepreneurial teams. That's both serial entrepreneurs as well as first-time founders. I'll take you through a case study where a postdoc was the founder, and we were happy to support that effort. And as I said, we do seed and Series A investing. But we're a little atypical because we are affiliated with a broad network of incubators, as Kirsten has alluded to. So about a decade ago, our 4 general partners launched shared lab spaces for wet lab, for biological and chemistry type of science. And that has spread now to 23 incubators around the world in 13 cities, including now in Europe. Last year, we launched 2 labs in Paris and 1 in Heidelberg, Germany. We started in Cambridge and San Francisco, as one would imagine. We now have dominant positions in those markets with 8 labs in Cambridge and 4 in San Francisco. A lot of these labs are collaborations with universities, including we support 3 labs for Harvard and Cambridge. We support an incubator in New Haven for Yale University, 1 in New York City that's a collaboration with NYU. We also work very closely with UT Southwestern at a lab in Dallas. And finally, we support UCLA through a partnership with the Lundquist Institute at our lab in Los Angeles. We originally started with very close ties to UCSF for some of the labs in San Francisco. Currently, a lot of the labs are now independently run and operated. We currently have the capacity for about 450 companies incubating on the platform, and that's going to grow to much higher than that over the next few years. We have plans to bring on several more labs. Here is the team. Half of us are based in a Cambridge office and half of us are based in our San Francisco office. definitely reach out if you are in those geographies, you're looking for VCs for any purpose, panels, workshops, etc. Our labs also have the capacity to host events, which we do for accelerators like Nucleate and many other programs that you're probably familiar with. So our platform is this lab network. We're affiliated with it. How it actually works is we sit on the selection committees for all of these labs. So as companies apply for residency, we hear their pitches, we meet them, we weigh in on who's appropriate for residency. When they move in, we really get to know them. And it's pretty often that it's not until 6 to 12 months after they've moved in that we actually end up writing a check. We don't necessarily have equity rights in the companies in the labs. We really first serve as a partner. So we help them solve a space need. We make connections. We look at pitch decks. We look at data, et cetera. So we really get to know them. And then, hopefully when they're raising their seed round, and they look to us as a partner, which they often do. So we don't have necessarily the right to participate in the rounds for the companies that incubate in our labs, but we typically make about a handful of investments of all of those companies that we see every year. And we really, as I already alluded to, we get to leverage this in-person diligence, really getting to know the teams and the science. We get to have a global perspective when it comes to the science and the technical aspects, as well as the talent that we can leverage. And the shared lab infrastructure really drives capital efficiency. Companies can come in and rent one bench at a time per month. It allows them to scale as they raise capital, also scale back when markets are tough, as they have been recently. And then we have a whole network of pharma partners, which I'll speak to on the next slide. So one thing that we get to leverage as well is over this last decade or so of building out all these incubators, a lot of pharma has partnered with us through the labs, but they've also partnered with us through the fund. So we have 8 currently pharma who are LPs in our fund. We have a lot of sponsors of activities at the lab network. They're in the labs getting to know companies. And this is really integral to our model. So our LPs, we meet with quarterly and share deal flow. And where they are interested in building relationships with these incubating companies, we make those introductions far earlier than it's time to actually acquire these companies. And that's part of our model, is getting pharma interested in these companies and playing a role in getting to know them, helping guide experiments and milestones that might be appropriate as they grow, and hopefully have them at the table when it's time to sell. And we've been pretty successful at this so far with a number of acquisitions. This is one. So I thought I would share at least one case study to give you a sense of how we meet companies, get to know them, and support them through investing. So this is a company called Mitochinen. AbbVie bought them in October of last year. We originally saw them through a postdoc from UCSF, Nick Hertz, who's featured here in the left side of this slide. He had this really unique approach to activating PINK1. This was a target that pharma had tried to develop drugs for Parkinson's disease and had failed. Nick had figured it out. And so we accepted him into the labs in San Francisco, supported ultimately his seed round. We brought in 2 of our pharma LPs into that round, and then introduced them to AbbVie. So AbbVie was a big supporter at the time, still is, of the activities in the lab in San Francisco. They got to know Mitochinen, Nick, and the CEO, Dan, and took an option to the technology in 2020. So that brought in a bunch of non-dilutive capital that allowed them to take the seed round, combine it with that non-dilutive option capital, and get through IND. AbbVie and Mitochinen really together developed that IND plan. And once those milestones were met, they elected their exclusive right to acquire the technology last year in October, as I said. So this is, not all of our exits look like this. We wish they did, but this is really our goal. And this is how our strategy plays out in real time. And it was a great exit for our fund. So I wanted to wrap up by sharing how we support academic technology. So in addition to making direct investments in academic spinouts, for example, like Mitochinen, we also have a pre-seed program. So as I mentioned, we write seed and Series A checks. 98% of the capital is in that format. But we've recently taken a small amount of capital and then leveraged it with capital coming from Eli Lilly as well as Ono, Japanese pharma Ono, and built a program that offers pre-seed opportunities of 500K. So it's 500K in the form of a safe. It's a lab bench in any of our labs around the world. It is mentoring from all of us. And this year we're joined by Alloy Therapeutics, who is also bringing equity for service, so up to $1 million for companies that are developing novel antibodies. So if you are, you could be eligible to win those services as well. This is the third year that we're running this program. We're currently accepting applications through July 15th. We're looking to make 6 investments this year. We made 6 last year. We'll make our investment decisions in September. There's some links here and a QR code. You can learn more. The application is built into our website at missionbiocapital.com. There's a frequently asked questions sheet that we put together. But it's turned out to be a really great way to support academic spinouts. We kind of expected that, but it's been nice to see that there's been a lot of demand from academic spinouts in the applicant pools. And I'm going to skip a slide for a second. So I thought I would share with this particular audience that we had a ton of applications from academic spinouts last year in the pool. This is just showing the universities and medical schools around the world that submitted at least 2 applications. There were a whole bunch of others. And part of that, I think, is we were able to really partner with, I'm sure some of you that are on the phone, so thank you if you partnered with us last year and helped us get the word out about this program last year. And we're happy to come in and talk to tech transfer offices or select groups of faculty that might think this is a good opportunity for them. We've done that in the past and answer questions and all of that. But really thanks to anyone on the line that did help us last year. And as an announcement, we're doing it again this year. And just to wrap it up, so here's a look at the 8 companies that we've actually invested in through this particular program, the Platinum program. And so many of them, as you'd imagine, still in stealth mode. Probably about half of them, because of the Platinum ticket, were able to actually spin out. So they weren't even officially launched when they applied for the Platinum program, but with a little bit of capital and the lab bench, it really accelerated that decision for them. And that's fine. We don't need all of the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Many of them were in active conversations for exclusive options or license from the universities. From our perspective, we need to be confident that the team knows the intellectual property associated with the technologies, knows whether or not they need to take rights to those intellectual properties, and have begun the conversations with the universities. Some of them had executed options, some of them are still actually negotiating with the tech transfer offices. I hope it also gives you a sense of sort of the types. We are therapeutics heavy, but there's a mix here of sort of screening, not proprietary screening assays or ways to do drug discovery differently, as well as asset-based opportunities where people already have a small molecule in mind or an actual therapeutic target. So very early, excuse me. And a lot of these companies, the money is spent on, as you'd imagine, reproducing the science outside of the academic setting for the first time, doing high throughput screening and looking for hits that they can actually build their company around and their pipeline around. And a lot of the time is spent with mentoring and looking at the right milestones that you should be trying to achieve in that first year or 2 of the program, looking at the right therapeutic indications to go after if you're a platform technology. Lilly and Ono are really generous with their times. They often will, help you look at the right animal model that you should be starting with, or things like that. So it's turned out to be a great program. We're really excited about this program. We'll make 6 more investments this year, and I'll just end with this slide. And it's a growing small portfolio that we work with. Sits kind of outside of our normal direct investment portfolio, but we love it if some of these companies turned into direct investments for us over the next couple of years as they work through the early proof of concept de-risking in our labs. So happy to connect with anybody offline or drop the questions in the chat and learn more about the program. But thank you to Kirsten and OUP for the opportunity, and I will stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We do have a couple of questions, but we're going to hold off on the questions until we get through Joe talking about portal innovations, and then we'll jump right into these questions that we're getting in.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And before I get into my couple slides, and I joined this, I really want this to be an introduction and a discussion. And I think with that spirit, I think it does match really what Portal Innovations is about, which is thinking about the founders and how we, in a crafted way, can best fit the goals of the founder, get to know the founder, and work with them through their long journey, because drug development, as we all know, is very challenging. There's a lot of pieces and players and challenges, and at the end of the day, it's a data readout that ultimately drives the success to our ultimate goal of treating patients together. And so a little bit about Portal Innovations. What I love about Portal Innovations is it was founded by biotech entrepreneurs, John and Pat Flavin, who started Pyxis Oncology in Chicago and really scaled that company in a place that traditionally you don't see biotech companies being scaled from. And with those trials and hurdles that they went through, the idea of creating a venture firm that could go to a place like Chicago, and indeed, that is our flagship city. Very recently, 2021, we're a very new firm, and in many ways, we're a startup firm ourselves. We sought to address that challenge, and currently we're backed by CalSTRS in our first funds, the California State Teachers Retirement System, who's been amazing partners to help us take that vision and scale it beyond Chicago, which to date has been wildly successful. Well over 40 companies. We've invested in 14 in cash to date, in which we've done equity in lieu of rent. And I'll talk about our crafted capital system and the components of it, and how we can tailor that crafted capital to the individual startup and the founder and their vision, and work together to achieve it. And so maybe with that, I'll ask to go to the next slide, and then I'll showcase what I mean by crafted capital. And so going back to the origin of the firm in Chicago, if you think about who we invest in, which is pre-seed, seed, and Series A biotech founders and companies, in a place like Chicago, you really need three key components to scale that idea and make it a reality. You need capital, of course, you need physical lab space, and then you need connections to bring it all together, different partners along the drug development journey to realize the vision. And so the idea was, on the capital side, Portal, we offer two investment vehicles. One is a cash investment, and the cash investments coincide with the physical presence of the company at one or more of our sites, and I'll talk about where we're going and where we're at currently. And what we invest, our first check is $500,000. We don't lead invest, but we do partner with our venture partners. And so for us, partnerships and collaborations, and you'll see this as I go through our model and talk about our model and what crafted capital means. It's connections with people in the ecosystem and in different parts of our industry. And we rely heavily on those connections to make these founder ideas possible. And so $500K cash is our first investment. And again, we've made 14 of these to date since 2021. The other vehicle that we leverage is what we call equity in lieu of rent. But again, tying back to being in the incubator with us and working with us to drive forward. We see that as a part of the de-risking process and a part of the partnership and relationship building process. So the equity in lieu of rent piece is where we take a lease, and it varies depending on where we're at, but benches and desks is the primary model of how we set the leases for founder companies. And so we can take 30% of that lease and we can bring it forward in the form of equity. So whereby for the founder, we lower the CapEx and we have cash in the form of equity that the founder can deploy for OpEx. So again, thinking through how can we be flexible on the capital side to best support the founder. And these are the two vehicles that we primarily leverage to date. On the lab side, we went full out on the lab. In Chicago, it's all state-of-the-art technology, myriad of different types of technology, meets a myriad of different indications, wet lab, dry lab, and it's all top brand new. The advantage of going to a portal site is we were so new that most of our equipment is also new. So it's all, we don't cut corners there. It's all state of the art. And so that's another key piece. We want to make sure that we have all of the tools in the lab for the founders to be successful. And we currently have our labs in Chicago. That space since 2021 is now maxed in terms of occupancy with over 40 companies. So wildly successful in Chicago. Now where I'm at, I'm in the old, now what was the old Boston Globe building. Now we transformed it into a state-of-the-art lab, and our doors opened literally 3 weeks ago. So again, state-of-the-art, brand new. In this case, we retrofitted the building into labs, which is great because now we've taken a place that was once very special to the area where and once thrived, and it brought jobs and economics to South Boston. And it essentially sat vacant for years. And now we've come in and revamped it with the help of Beacon Capital and Mass Bio on the workforce development side with Bioversity. And we've now created an opportunity to bring back and revive the economics and the workforce development of this area in South Boston, which is just a great piece of what we're doing when we're thinking about going to new places and building these labs. And we're also expanding into Atlanta and Houston later this year. I'll talk more about ecosystem on the next slide, but I'll round out crafted capital. So lab, capital, and then of course human capital. So connections to the industry and people within the industry. And as we thought about the areas, some of the areas I'll highlight that, and programs that we really lean on to help our founders. One we call Portal Pathbreakers, and this is the crux of this program ultimately is to take, and we've already successfully gone through 2 iterations of this, one with Novo Nordisk and one with Astellas. But the crux of it is to take the pharma area of interest. Pharma ultimately has a portfolio and a direction of which they want to take their portfolios and their science and define where they want to treat patients. And we take that strategy and that relationship and understanding with that partner, and then we highlight and connect our founders that are in our different diverse ecosystems to try to match and create value for each other. And again, we just kicked that off this year, Novo Nordisk and Astellas, and we're just wrapping up and have actually made selections for our Novo program. And so it's super exciting to have achieved that, and looking forward to pushing that program forward as well. I should also highlight, we have another program called EX Cubed, Execution, Excellence, and Elevation. And the idea here is oftentimes we see, and especially in places outside of Boston, there's many companies, you don't see companies go the distance from idea to commercialization. And so we had to think through, how can we support a company in a place other than Boston, for example, with C-suite talent that's been there and done that. And that's really the crux of this program, where we have a network of great talents, C-suite executives, where we can match 2 companies in fractional form and really start that relationship, and it can grow, as the founder needs it to. And in addition, to fractional C-suite, we also provide connections to administrative talent as well, like accountants and IT. And so all these things take time if you're a founder and you're trying to figure out, what experiments you need to run. The last thing, you want to spend hours doing is trying to find a good accountant, or not that, not that accountants are bad, but, it's accountants are critical, right? And you need to find the right accountant that fits what you're trying to do. And lastly, our last piece of services today, we called as an AI machine learning tool, we called Stargaze. And this tool is effectively, as we are meeting founders and PIs at different universities and creating relationships with these universities and the talent that is within the university, or the talent that wants to spin out of the university. The idea is we can understand the core content and the drivers of which the innovation that these innovators are producing. And if we can predict where those innovators are likely to go, or how they could be successful, it could be very valuable to spin outs to other VC firms, to pharma, et cetera. And so the idea is we can leverage AI and machine learning to try and predict where the next big thing's going to go. And so those are our core programs to date. In terms of events, we do a lot of really cool events. One which we started here in Boston called Portal Pours. This really is our version to really connect the ecosystem. And now the idea is we have some great, cool topic talking about some cutting edge science, or talking about important topics such as, if you're a founder, how do you think about your exit? And we bring in our connections and folks that have been there and done that. And we have panels around these types of discussions. And it's a way to connect and connect with the local ecosystem and have libations and drinks as well. So it's just a fun way to engage and connect with the community. And the last event that we've really just started up this year as well is we call Biotech Bites. Biotech Bites, the idea is, well, we have a network of VCs. How do we connect these back to the founders again? And the idea is every quarter we do a Series A or a seed series pitch day. And so we invite companies in our portfolio or member companies that we're close with and see as opportunistic for that particular timing, and give them the opportunity to pitch a room full of investors, to which we can help facilitate future introductions. So again, connecting people and human capital back to the founder. And ultimately, summarizing the slide, human capital, the physical and the financial capital, all together, we call it crafted capital, because at the end of the day, we want everything I just talked about to fit and be useful to the specific founder for their companies and their goals and where they want to take it, to take that company to the next level and beyond. And next slide. So here I'll talk about where Portal's at. I'll talk a little bit about ecosystem, particularly Boston. I'll go in a little more detail and tell kind of Boston's story and how that connects to the other ecosystems as well. I'll highlight, but in the essence of time, I'll hit Boston with a little more detail. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the panel, Portal started in 2021 in Chicago, so pretty new firm. Now Chicago completely full. Again, invested in 14 companies now. Boston, I started in Boston when in the old Boston Globe building, and you see the picture in the top right. That building was absolutely run down, and you can see from this picture, amazing job reinvigorating this building, and Portal now has the opportunity to build companies and bring economics and workforce development to South Boston here, and to talk a little bit about the ecosystem we have here for founders, because where we're at also complements the crafted capital system. And so because we're in South Boston, we do touch on this economic and workforce development mission, which I mentioned, but within it, we can really complement founders further by having partnerships, one of which I mentioned, BioVersity. It's a part of the workforce development. So if you're scaling your company, folks at BioVersity are learning how to are becoming trained to become lab techs. And so there's an ability to actually hire local talent. UMass Boston, a key university partner across the street, has core facilities in vivarium access. And if you know drug discovery and have been around company creation and executing programs in discovery, having access to a vivarium, in this case, it's potentially discounted, is absolutely massive. And so our companies and founders have access to that. As well as we think about the amenities and the work-life balance within this building, when you have things like free gym access, which is completely brand new gym, free parking, at least currently, no time limits, and currently no membership fees, and the costs of which you can run your business reduces greatly while still having access and convenience to core facilities and vivarium. And so when we think about where we're going, those are super important pieces. And of course, we're in Boston. Boston is the mecca of biotech, lots of universities, lots of hospitals. That's all part of it too, right? And similarly in Houston and Atlanta, in Chicago, great universities, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, Rice, Baylor, Texas Medical Center, great institutions. MD Anderson. These are all part of the aim and why we're going to these cities. And so when we look at big picture too, yes, you can take advantage of being a part of these ecosystems. But what's also cool about where we're going is, say, if you're in Boston and it makes sense to be connected to MD Anderson, well, because we have that presence in Houston, we can help connect those two ecosystems together for your company if that's something that you're looking for. And we're happy to make that connection. And lastly, I'll close here by just saying, at the end of the day, we like to say we live with our investments. We're a people first, type group. And, to learn more about Portal and get involved with Portal, I would say, one, definitely, connect to it, try to connect with me, connect with folks at any of our sites, go to our website, engage with, the website. It's actually a really well done website, super dynamic, lots of videos, pictures, like learn about us. And then, certainly reach out and let's have a conversation. I think that's the best starting point and to get engaged with us. Let's talk.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. We have a lot of questions that have come in for both of you, and I have a lot of questions. So first thing is, you talked a lot about your locations, and they are in some ways the usual suspect of locations, but a lot of academic institutions aren't necessarily in those locations. Could you talk about, the fact that perhaps not all of your companies do start at one of those locations and how that comes about? So I guess the first part of the question, do you work with startups that don't actually originate from where perhaps your shared labs facility is? And how does that transition perhaps happen from a place where the shared lab facility itself is not? So Joe, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, so certainly we're open to any company that wants to come to any of our locations and grow at one or more of them. I will say by all means, it's a matter of simply just reaching out to us. Now, what does Portal invest in companies that aren't going to come to the lab? Not currently, no. But I will say if the idea is for a company that sees value in going to one of our ecosystems to date, and mind you, we are going to continue to expand still very early in the days in terms of our existence. So yes, we definitely plan to go to more places. But today, the best way to examine investment and create value, we're looking to have that move happen to one of the ecosystems we're at.
Jennifer?
Yeah, for us, it's somewhat similar. We don't have to invest in companies in our incubators, but we often do. So I would say, 90% of the companies in our portfolio have come through the labs, or we've met them and helped them get into the labs. And there's, a number of reasons. It's capital efficient. We get to really know them. I've spoken to a lot of them as part of our model. But, we have a company that we invested in that is now incubating in Cambridge, but we found them at the University of Florida. We don't have any labs in Florida or really anywhere near Florida. We have one in North Carolina. That would be the closest. They chose to come up to Cambridge and they wanted to be in a major biotech market. We supported that move. We've also had, companies that we've met in one incubator and want to move to a different. In Europe now, we're doing a lot of having a second presence in the States in one of our incubators. So, you don't have to necessarily come through one of the incubators. Having space in one of them is certainly an advantage from our perspective because of what our model is.
Great. Thank you both. We had a couple questions for each of you about what is the best way to actually approach each of you, but in general, it was a kind of a general question about approaching VCs, which is a question we get a lot as well. Is it best to send you an email? Because you both have these application programs too. Should they just send an application? Really, what's the best way to get connected and hopefully have themselves noticed more? And Jennifer, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure. So I have sort of a unique role at the firm. So I am the person that you can just email and I will make sure it gets routed appropriately. and I'll put my contact in the chat, or Kirsten can send it around later. But even for things like our platinum program, we are happy to look at applications before people hit submit, provide feedback, provide our perspective on what might be missing or could be strengthened. We do a lot of that through the platinum program. That's probably the best vehicle for that type of engagement. I would say for direct investing, for a $5 million check for the seed round, it's harder to do that type of feedback. We're looking at a tremendous amount of deal flow. But certainly for academic spinouts that are interested in the platinum program, or otherwise are just really, really early, I would probably be your best bet, and we're happy to do that. As I mentioned, University of Florida and other places, we have found academics, spinout technologies, and spent a lot of time helping them get stood up. It's part of our model.
Yeah, similar to Jennifer, I am also the person to contact in order to best, if I can help kind of figure out how Portal's model can best help, or certainly route to the next person. We don't require investment to leverage our labs, our model, and one or more of our ecosystems. And so with that, it's by all means, it starts with a conversation. Certainly, check. In just general advice, check out the firm, like what their model is, go to their website. Where we've talked about, kind of how we operate. So a little research goes a long way. And then with that, it helps to be a little more pointed and to help with what you're looking for. And, when we know, then, we can certainly help point you in the right direction.
So you both mentioned that you're early stage venture capital investors in the life sciences, concentrating heavily on therapeutics. Could you talk about, when you're looking at an academic startup company, what is it that you're looking for? What's the something that's kind of in something above the mark for each of you, and then who's actually making those decisions for each of your funds? And Joe, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, so going back to that crafted capital concept, I think at the end of the day, if an academic spinout sees value in our ability to leverage an ecosystem, so here in Boston, one of the universities that we're really close with is Northeastern, for example, and Northeastern doesn't have a spinout lab here, and so something as simple as hey, this company is it's incorporated, they have some grant funding, some they want to generate some data, and they're ready to go, officially, bench and a desk. That's all we need to get started. And then from there, it's just building the relationship with that company, understanding the founder's needs, where they're taking the science, and we can invest at any time, either out the gate or, a year later after some data generation. We can help connect talents. We can help connect other VCs that might be interested in the science that they're generating as well. I talked about portal path breakers and kind of emerging pharma strategies. There might be a fit there, and just engaging and connecting to those pharma partners. And so really the barrier of entry to work with us is super, super low, thinking through like a bench desk. And so with that, companies coming out, it's just, I would say it's low barrier of entry. But then of course, on the venture side, we have an investment committee, and, the way we evaluate science is similar to most VCs. It's, hey, what's your team like? Who's on your SAB or board? The experience of the founder, how's the technology differentiated? How's the science differentiated? What's the commercial impact? Those are the standard questions. Absolutely, we're going to look at that when it comes down to investment. And I will say, with that, at the same time, having the equity in lieu vehicle as well gives us a lot more flexibility as well to kind of sync and support via the capital structures as well.
I'd say for us, especially through things like the Platinum program, we're really looking for an outside of the box approach. So something that the science is really driving our curiosity and our interest, always first and foremost. And so we're taking a really hard look at the science. It helps to have, in vitro proof of concept, certainly. But that varies depending on what you're doing. If you're a platform company and you have a really interesting proprietary screen showing that that screen was able to find something successfully is great. It doesn't have to be, fully formatted we need a little bit of science and a little bit of data, but we're willing to take a really early bet. For many of our platinum program companies, we don't even have, lead candidates identified at that point in time. But it's because the science behind that screening system is so different and so differentiated from what we've seen. And if it works, could really be disruptive for whatever the target class is or whatever the problem is that you're solving. For us, we do like some of the more traditional markets that we're in neurodegeneration, we're in oncology, we're on I&I, we've done blindness, we're looking for things certainly that have clinical unmet need and are addressing clinical unmet need and have markets that make sense. And, I would say it is really about the science, and sometimes we do come in as operational roles when a full team is not there. If we are that excited about the science and there's a PhD student, but not someone who is ready to really lead a fundraising strategy or go out there, pitch and raise dollars, we might help build that out and build out that plan and that strategy and step in temporarily until a proper seed round is raised. We don't do that for the majority of our investments in our portfolio because the lift is extremely high. But we have probably a couple of investments that we have done that. We've taken really interesting technology out of an academic setting where there wasn't a clear team behind it, and stepped in as the operators for a period of time. So hopefully that's helpful.
Very helpful. I'm just going to ask really quickly, Jennifer, how are you feeling about rare, ultra rare markets?
Yeah, we're still looking, but certainly not as much as we used to. I think part of our model, being able to meet with a number of pharma on a quarterly basis, is really great insight into where they're positioning themselves and the pipelines they need to fill and how they want to fill them. And yeah, I would say the categories that I mentioned earlier are kind of where certainly also weight loss, certainly cardiometabolic, generally speaking, and is all of a sudden on everybody's radar, which is a space that even a year or two wasn't really for a lot of reasons. So there's been some shifts, and we're still looking at rare disease. We have some investments in the space, but I would say some larger markets now are dominating interest levels, which is funny.
Yeah. All right, following up on that question, and it's kind of in some ways the elephant in the room, right? Because we can't go without talking about startup companies without talking about talent. And do Mission BioCapital or Portal help identify talent for the startup companies when they're, particularly if they're looking at an academic institution, they're working with some academic founders. Is there a way that that either of you are able to help at that talent, maybe with a CEO or other talent that may be associated with the startup companies? And Joe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We just started our program this year called EX Cubed, Execution, Excellence, and Elevation. And that is precisely what this program does. And so oftentimes, as we know, especially early stage, pre-seed academics, great academic founder, drug development is a bear to tackle and bring an idea through, and to have early access or connection with a fractional CEO, for example, can be massively beneficial. And in this case, that's what this program does. So if we have a network of great CEOs that have been there, done that, scaled companies, exited companies, and are looking for the next thing, their next project, and really in their next connection with a passionate founder, and or vice versa, a CEO that wants to start up a new project, needs a CSO, we can find CSOs. And more broadly, this program also helps more of the administration piece as well. So if you're spinning out a startup, for example, you should understand or have a connection to a great accountant or an IT person to help set up your lab and have have that fractional or at least link to temporary help to help elevate your business. And so that's what this program does. And we just kicked it off this year.
Great. Jennifer.
Yeah, I'd say there is help with talent through the Platinum program directly. We are adding both general counsel, as well as accounting services as part of that Platinum ticket. But generally speaking, as an investment in our firm, I did mention that occasionally we do take operator roles when there really is a deficit from a talent perspective, and we're really excited about the science. We also do a little bit of company creation, and I mention it because it's very different than how other biotech company creation firms operate. It's more of an LLC model where we take very experienced management teams and fund them, and then they really deploy some of that, small amounts of that capital on multiple ideas, and if successful, build them out as full subsidiaries, and that go out and do their own independent fundraising. But the management team at the top is leveraged across all of those subs. And so they have themes. There's a cell and gene therapy company creation engine. There's others. And so if there's an academic technology that is interesting and thematically related, but just really no one wants to take it out from the academic environment, there's a talent issue, we will often send it to those company creation engines and say, is this of interest? And they might, look at it further, consider building it into their LLC as a sub that would be funded from the LLC, and then they would go out and raise proper rounds as an individual sub underneath them, which we would also participate in. So we do have some unique ways, whether we step in as operators, we leverage existing teams that are serial entrepreneurs that do company creation for us, or through the Platinum program with fractionalized operational support.
Great, thank you both. Seeing the pictures and having been actually at your wonderful facilities, if anyone has a chance to go visit your facilities, I highly recommend it. And not just to see the amazing facilities they have, but the community that is being built by all of you. It is really fantastic. So it's not just the things that people can touch at these buildings that actually is helping these companies. A lot of it is you're with co-founders who are going through the same thing. You've got mentors, advisors, people who've been there and done that as part of this. So that's a huge benefit to these shared lab facilities. So I really want to encourage people to take the chance to visit these as they can. One of the questions from the audience is about partnering with other wet labs and bringing them into your network. Have you considered doing something like that? I mean, maybe Jennifer, with 23 of them, maybe you've already done that. Jennifer, I'll start with you on that.
We've spoken, Portal and Mission, about potentially doing something similar, because we have one overlapping market, but the rest of our markets are not overlapping. So why not leverage all of these programs across a broader network? We haven't done anything officially with other incubators, but from our perspective, we don't have a competitive mindset with other incubators. We believe that the more incubators that are successful in a given geography will benefit the whole industry, right? If we can support early stage companies and give their technologies a shot, I think we're doing something great for the industry. So from our perspective, we're happy to work with other incubators in the area. In fact, we are 3 separate incubator brands. I didn't say this because it's complicated, but we have a brand in Cambridge and a brand in San Francisco and a brand everywhere else. And we've pulled them all under one house to collaborate together, and are certainly open to considering that with other firms as well.
Yeah, so similar line as Jennifer. I mean, at the end of the day, we're super new and we're expanding. We're new to these ecosystems, especially Boston. There's a lot of different incubators here. Initially thinking through, Boston's a probably good example of working together and collaborating. At the end of the day, and no surprise to folks in Boston, there's a lot of options in terms of incubators. And I think it's ultimately going to be great for the founders. So ultimately, we want founders to find the model that best fits them and can help produce great science and innovate and get to patients fast, right? And so I think as markets like Boston, where there are a lot of options, we keep trying to differentiate and say, okay, here at Southline, here's what we can offer and the value we can provide. And as companies come in, sometimes they're too late, sometimes too early. Maybe there's a better location fit. That's at the end of the day, as long as we're all putting the founder first and really trying to best fit the science and the people driving the science, I think that's the win.
So we have 4 minutes left now. So first of all, thank you both for putting your email addresses in the chat. Hopefully everyone saw that. If you have a specific question on a particular type of area that you are wondering if they might be interested in, please just email Jennifer and Joe about that. Katie's going to put in the chat a link to our survey, so please do respond to our survey. You'll also see it as you exit out of the webinar, but we do look at all these surveys. That's how we decide a lot of the webinars and the content that we put on here at OUP. I've got some very specific questions for each of you that have come in from the audience. Jennifer, I'll start with you. Did Mission BioCapital require Mitochondrion to execute an NDA or CDA with AbbVie to engage in the get-to-know-you interactions? And how did that work out, if so? People often have questions like, when does the NDA CDA conversation happen?
Yeah, so we always do non-confidential, information sharing to our pharma, and then it's up to the companies to regulate that. So we don't insert ourselves to get CDA signed. It's up to Mitochondrion and AbbVie. We simply make the introductions and share only non-confidential information. In fact, that's part of the Platinum program rules as well. So we only want non-confidential information through that program. That's great info.
Good to know. Joe, is a really early stage firm, right? You guys started, as you said, in 2021. How do you measure your success and your investments in portfolio at this point? And do you have any exits so far? As it seems pretty early for exits though too.
Yeah, it's a good question, and indeed, as such a new firm, it takes time to get to an exit, especially when we're starting, super early. But I'll for example, here in Boston, there's a company called Syntis Bio, and their aim is to revolutionize oral therapies for obesity, diabetes, and rare diseases. They're currently raising their Series A. They started with us actually in hemp lab space summer of last year and have since grown, generated evidence through their seed, scaled with us in the temp space, moved down with us in a permanent space with a bigger footprint, and now raising that A. And so, successful A imminent, ideally, and follow-on investments after that. I mean, it'll still take time. Of course, to have an exit after an A would be awesome. But certainly it'll take time. Yeah. Tough to measure early at this point.
Thanks, Joe. Jennifer, do you have a partner with an accelerator site in the San Diego area? Quick question.
We do have a lab in San Diego. It's under the brand BioLab San Diego. And in fact, if anyone's going to Bio, we're having a grand opening. They're expanding. They're adding another floor June 2nd. So from 1 to 4 p.m., if you want to Google them and head on over, there's food and drink, and it'll be great.
Great, thank you. Final kind of question area. Is a lack of lab space a big barrier to most life science startup companies? And can you talk about how, potentially this makes your model stand out from other early stage investors in the life sciences? And Joe, I'll start with you and then with Jennifer.
Yes, absolutely. It's location dependent, of course, and that was really the catalyst of Portal in specifically Chicago. In this case, they're contrasting to Boston. Maybe Boston, San Francisco are the only maybe difference in this case, because there is actually a lot of lab space. But most other places, no. There's the bench desk model is not there, and it's a huge hurdle for companies to scale from an infrastructure standpoint. Commercial lease, 5-7 years, thousands of square foot, no shared equipment, no shared cost structure. It's near impossible for a seed company to scale, in a place that doesn't have the bench desk model that we're providing and providing everything else that we've talked about.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think we certainly think it's an advantage, but there's lots and lots of early stage biotech venture firms that do not have lab affiliations. And I think they would argue that it's probably a distraction and they get to focus solely on, and sourcing and leading and managing deal flow. We love it. We have an entire separate 100 and something person team that operates and manages all of the labs. The folks that I showed you today, are dedicated to, getting to know the companies and making the right investments and helping those companies succeed. So we think it's just a benefit. And certainly from our perspective, we've also been able to leverage it to build a huge pharma network that is basically a whole bunch of buyers that we have really strong connections with. So we think it's capital efficient way to build biotech companies and get them launched, which drives our returns and our LPs returns. And we have sort of built-in buyers, if you will.
Right. Well, thank you both. Thank you for all the questions, first of all, from our audience. If you do have any additional questions that we haven't been able to answer, please do follow up directly with Jennifer and Joe. They did provide their email addresses in the chat. They also will be in the deck that we send to all of our registered attendees. And honestly, VCs actually are not that difficult to find online. Believe it or not, they actually do usually post their email addresses as well. So you can follow up with them if you do have any additional questions. Thank you for all the questions today. Jennifer, Joe, thank you for doing this and talking with us and allowing people a chance to get to know you as investors, getting to know your firms and what it is that they offer, answering some of their questions. And hopefully this will spur some more great applicants and potential portfolio company opportunities for both of you. Really appreciate your time today and doing this inaugural Meet the VCs program with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks
us.
for having me.